All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started for today. As some of you can't make it because you have other things to do at school or your internships, that's perfectly fine. Okay, I'm going to be recording these videos as well, so I can then post it on YouTube, and then I'll send you guys a link on our WhatsApp group. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. And how are you guys? How is everyone today? I hope you guys are doing fantastically at school, and I hope everything is fine. Around here in Canada, we've got this, I think it's a winter vortex. So it was sunny one day, the next day it's just snowy and weird, but it's not cold enough for it to be like frozen snow. So the snow like melts and just makes like these puddles of water that you have around the city. So it's not really a great day to be out. It's a great day to actually be in the home office that we have here. All right, so I'm pretty happy I don't actually have to go out and take a bus or whatever. However, like I said, when you move to a country like this, they have the equipment that you can buy, which will help you with the weather. So boots are not that expensive. You can get a pair of like winter boots for about, I think, $40. Okay, which is like 40 reais. You guys should never do the exchange, because if you come here and you're working here, you're making dollars. So 40 reais for people that live here is pretty much the same as 40 reais in Brazil, more or less equivalent. Okay, but of course, if I say $40, everybody goes, "Oh wow, that's multiplied by 4, so it's nearly 200 reais." But you know what? I think you would pay around 200 reais for a pair of winter boots anyway. All right, especially the ones that you can buy here. The quality is fantastic. So it doesn't matter. I mean, like, your feet are usually dry on the street anyway. Okay, that's a little bit about me. Let's jump in to what we're going to be doing today. So last class, for those of you that were here or who attended the class last week, you know who you are. We did talk about we talked about an overview of the entire TOEFL test. Okay. So I showed you guys exactly what happens in the reading section. So I'm just going to recap that briefly today. All right. And then I'm going to start off with a couple things about the reading passage. All right. I know that some of you did the listening, so I wanted to hear more from you guys about how that experience was, but we can do that when we're all together in the same classroom together, hopefully down the line next week. All right, so I want to hear your feedback from the listening first before explaining it to you. All right, so we're going to start off with a different section today as well, which is going to be the reading. But firstly, let me just illustrate pretty much from top to bottom, just to review last week's class as well. Okay, I don't think I'm going to film 2 hours of class, because I don't think anyone would watch a 2-hour video of me speaking. When you guys are here in the classroom, we can definitely interact a little bit more, so the time goes by a little quicker. But just me here yapping away, I don't think that's the best idea. So I'm going to film maybe like a 40-50-minute video just covering the topics that we're going to be working on. And of course, I'll send you guys some homework as soon as that is done. Okay, so to start, thank you all for watching. Yes, all right. Let us now enter the boring stuff. All right. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen like I did pretty much in class, and just kind of walk you guys through how the reading section is done. All right, they're actually making it a lot easier for you now, only with 3 texts to go through. So that's not bad, because before they had 4 texts, sometimes 4 passages. And there were like 12, 13 questions per passage. Some of them were worth 2 points. Others were worth, 1.5. And the scoring, it just got really complicated. So they made it a whole lot easier now. They just keep it to 3 different passages, 10 questions each. So each question is worth essentially 1 point. Just a reminder of the score that we're aiming for here is pretty high. It's above 100. And I believe the reading is one of your strong suits. So I would always aim for above 25 points in the reading, which means that you can't make more than 5 mistakes. All right, that should be like your goal, is to not make those 5 mistakes. All right. I also want to explain to you guys the different difficulty levels that you have on each question, because some questions I believe will be a lot easier for you to get, and some of them will be much more difficult than, yeah, much more difficult. So there are different difficulty levels. Some questions take a little more time, others take less time. So let's just take a look at that and see what we can do about that. Okay. So without further ado, popping open my TOEFL book, and let's just dive into this real quick. Okay. Well, here we are. All right, the official TOEFL IBT tests. This is the book that has, I believe, five full tests. So I like to use this book. There's another book that they have from the ETS TOEFL, but it's more of how can I say? It's like it has all the explanations. Okay, I'm going to send that one to you guys as well. But I think the best method for us to work with together in class is just to dive into it. It's much more practical. I can explain it to you guys as I go in class. All right. So I just love just jumping right into the test itself. Okay. So let us go through the different, yeah, there's 5. Look at that. Okay. Let's just go through the different formats of how this test is pretty much. Okay. So we're going to start with the reading section. All right. Just so we're clear on how this works, the reading section is 1 hour long. There are 3 passages. So that is exactly 20 minutes per passage. So you have 10 questions, 20 minutes. That means you should allow yourself about 2 minutes per question. Some questions, however, are easier, which means that you do not need to take a full 2 minutes there. Okay. And I'm going to show you which questions are these and why it should take you less time. If you take less time on the easier questions, you then have more time on the more difficult questions. All right. So it's important for you to find a balance in between, you know, not spending too much time on something that is easy or obvious and allowing yourself to have more time on the more difficult questions. Now, why is this important? Because once you get to the test, you've got, you know, the pressure of being there. You've got other people taking the test around you. It's expensive. You don't want to spend this money again because you could do lots of things with this money. You could probably go to Lollapalooza. Actually not, because Lollapalooza in Brazil now is crazy expensive. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's like 1,500 reais full price for 1 day of shows. 1 day. I don't get it. I don't get it. Do you love these bands that much? Maybe it's because everybody hasn't seen these bands since the beginning of the pandemic. So now it's the end and everyone's like, yay, bands. But like, no, don't do that. All right. But buy a 4K television with that price. 50-inch 4K television in Brazil, which is not that expensive, you know, and watch the show at home. Buy a couple beers, have a barbecue, do something like that. Like, don't waste your money on that stuff. Unfortunately, most of these places are usually sold out. So I'm like, no, don't do it. Anyway, back to what we're doing here, pretty much. So some questions are easier than others, okay? So what I want you guys to do after the video today is just kind of understand which ones you have more difficulties in, all right? And then we're gonna do those together in the classroom a little bit, okay? So once again, we do have a 1 hour reading section, okay? Here it says there are 3 passages. Give yourself 18 minutes to read each passage. Okay. The entire section will take 54 minutes to complete. So it's actually 1 hour. But this gives you a little extra time. See, they're already telling you what to do here, okay? Except we are not going to read each passage. We don't have to read the entire passage unless you're really good at speed reading. But I don't recommend it. I've never seen a student succeed in reading the whole passage. Why? The passage is long, 1. 2, it's usually about a topic that you're not entirely familiar with, like the desert formation or aqueducts or some other scientific factor. So by the time you read this very large text and you get to the end of it, you forgot half of it. At least that's how I work. I'm like, okay, I don't want to read this crap. All right, I read it now. What was it about? No idea. So not recommended to do that at all. Instead, the TOEFL made it even easier for us now because they actually show the paragraph that the question is supposed to be in. Okay, so let's analyze the first one. Okay, colonizing the Americas, not bad. Great, we see the different patterns. We don't have to spend time with any of this, and we're not going to read any of this pretty massive and very boring passage about colonizing the Americas. Okay, look at this here. So the first thing you have to notice, and expand this a little bit, amplify this. All right, great, a little bigger, is that they already give you the paragraph where the word is. They give you the paragraph and they highlight the word for you. Pretty cool right there. So the word is already highlighted. This is a vocabulary question. It's vocabulary in context, and I will explain you why. I will learn you why. What exactly is happening here? They want you to substitute the word persuasively to the closest meaning of the word. Now, you might think, oh, this is a synonymous meaning. Okay, it could be a synonym of the word persuasively, which means to persuade, but it's very important that you read around the word to understand its context. What is this word trying to represent in the context? All right. So it is vocabulary in context. It is not just closest in meaning to. It is also about the context of the word. So tip number one, when you guys face this kind of question, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to read around the passage. So he persuasively argued that such an ice-free corridor did not exist until much later, when the continental ice began its final retreat. So when someone persuasively argues, you know, they're trying to be pushy. You know, they're trying to really they're trying to persuade you to kind of convince you to do that. But here we have two words that are very similar. Be careful, okay? We have aggressively and we have convincingly. Which one do you guys think it is? So if the closest in meaning to persuasive would be convincing, because I'm trying to convince you otherwise. However, the context does present a sort of clue that he is aggressively arguing something with someone else. Okay, because of the word argue, he's presenting his argument. So he is either aggressively or convincingly trying, but I don't think a convincing argument would work here. So I'm probably going to go with the word aggressively because the context requires something more aggressive. Most people get this type of question wrong because we have two words that are very, very, very similar. And that is why the context around the word is, in fact, the most important part of the vocabulary questions. Okay, and notice something here, very cool. There are 4 options. 2 of them are usually going to be obsolete. They're going to be like, okay, obviously it's not about flexibility and it has nothing to do with carefully. He carefully argued. It's not careful. He's like trying to be persuasive, you know, he's trying to be very, very persuasive about it. So he wasn't like, oh, the ice-free corridor does not exist till March. He's like, yes, this corridor, it does not exist till much later. Okay, so he's very, you know, aggressively arguing what needs to be done here. Okay, so it's really important right off the bat. The first trick that you do is you eliminate 2 of these options. Okay, and you're going to see that every vocabulary question has 2 options that you're going to eliminate. So the first thing you do here, when you see the highlighted word, number 1, don't read the whole paragraph. There's no need. Read the context around the word. I usually like to read the phrase before and the phrase after, But in this case, he starts here. That's fine. Sometimes the word is going to be in the middle, like here, like ice-free, and then you could start reading from the back all the way to ice-free, okay? But if the word's at the beginning of the phrase, you can probably understand the context just by reading this phrase, okay? So don't read the whole paragraph. You don't have time to do that. Instead, just read this part of the word here. Understand the context, what he's trying to do. Second, eliminate two of the options that you believe are going to be incorrect, which will give you a 50-50% chance of getting the right one. So we want to diminish your chances of making a mistake. And how do we do that? Elimination process, or process of elimination. We eliminate as many options as we can to narrow down the one that is correct. All right. So right away, if you get rid of B and C, there's only A and C left. Sorry, B and D, there's only A and C left, which gives you a 50% chance of getting the right one. And then based on the context, you can pick the one that you believe is right. Clear enough? All right. And I want to hear from you guys later. Which one do you think is correct, convincingly or aggressively? Don't look it up in the answer key, all right? Because we're going to come back to this one a little later. Okay. Let's now move down to question 2. Okay. These are very specific questions. This question says, paragraph 2 supports the idea that before the 1970s, most archaeologists held which of the following views? This is very specific information. Before the 1970s, what views, keyword, about the earliest people to reach the Americas? So what were the views? Were these people aggressive? What did they think? Okay, just so you guys know, this word view is like an opinion. So what opinion did they have on these people that were in the Americas? Let's take a look. Okay. Great. Skin boats. So there's a lot of different stuff that you could see here to support that. All right. What I would like to do is obviously look for the word 1970s, focus on the views. Let's see. Here we go. Until the early 1970s, most archaeologists did not consider the coast a possible migration route to the Americas because geologists originally believed that during the last ice age, the entire northwest coast was covered by glacial ice. Great. So they didn't think that this was a possible migration route to the Americas. That's what I'm getting here. Okay. It also says that this route would have enabled humans to enter the southern areas of the Americas prior to the melting. Okay, remember that this is before the 1970s, so it might not be here. It might in fact be here. Okay, let's see what it says here. So support is growing for the alternative theory that people using watercraft, possibly skin boats, moved southward from Beringia along the Gulf of Alaska and then southward along the northwest coast of North America, possibly as early as 16,000 years ago. Okay, so in this case, the question is looking before the 1970s. Hey, John, how's it going, man?
Hey, how are you?
Great, welcome back. We're actually filming this class for everyone. So
okay.
It's all good. No, you can chime in. Don't worry, you can talk now. Okay?
Okay, yes.
Do not worry, okay? How are you, man? How's it going?
I'm actually fine. This week we are coming back to FGV after 2 years.
In-person classes, right?
Yes.
Nice.
So I had the mask on.
I hear you.
And I'm running. It's not just switch between links now. You have to switch classes.
Yeah, to switch classes, right? So you have to go from one class to the other.
Yes. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's nice to come back to stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's nice to come back to stuff. Things here in Canada are also opening up. The pandemic here, as far as like the law, was a lot worse than in Brazil because like the government shut everything down. You can't leave your house.
Mhm.
That was it. In Brazil, it's like you shouldn't leave, but you can. You know, so around here it was like you can't leave. If you leave, you get an alert on your phone from the government. It says like you can't leave. If you leave, you'll either get arrested or you will have to pay a fine of like $200,000. Like
Yes, in Europe was just like that. I think there were in Italy it was like 5,000 euros if you did not respect the rules about it. So yeah, and here you could do it. I think the only thing that could happen is the police to come and to give a fine of, I don't know, 200 reais or something like
right,
that.
right. Brazil's a much larger country, which means it's much more difficult for you to control everybody. Like there's no police force capable of keeping everybody at home.
So
Around here, there's less people, so it's easier for them to be able to, to enforce this type of procedure.
yeah,
And of course, the shutting down of a lot of businesses and things like that, it really hurt the economy. But now things are opening up. Things are opening up again, which is great. I was talking about Lollapalooza. Do you know Lollapalooza?
yes, I have a friend that's from Rio de Janeiro that's coming here, and he will stay in my house. Of course, not in the 3 days that he will be like meeting everyone in this. I think there was already a Lollapalooza in New York, I guess.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yes.
What I was discussing is that how expensive the tickets have become. Um, all over the world, tickets have become very expensive, like a 70-80% increase, sometimes more. I think in Brazil, a Lollapalooza ticket per day is like 1,500 reais.
Yes, I guess so. Because half of it, when you are a student, you pay
Sure,
half of the price,
sure.
and it was already $800.
That's insane. That's
100,
insane. That's crazy.
yeah. And the minimum wage here is like 1,020.
Yeah, like I don't understand these metrics. I mean,
But the
I
point
really
is, it
don't.
works. People save money to go to the Lollapalooza and whatever. I don't have,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
prefer to stay
mean,
home to drink beer with friends. It's much more. Or you can have even, I don't know, 4 great dinners in some great pubs in São Paulo. I went to one pub that it's really fine. It's in
sure.
the Teatro Municipal here in São Paulo.
Okay.
And I spent like 20,000 times,
200?
200 guys.
Yes.
It was of course expensive, but I really enjoyed it. It was 6 hours experience.
Wow.
There was great music, great food, great Brazilian food,
Hmm.
and yes, and I could have like 4 of them to stay the whole month going to one instead of going to the Lollapalooza. So it's much more what I like to do.
I admire your logic because I have the same exact type. I don't see it's for me. It's an expense. It's not only expensive. It's more wasteful. Especially in the times that we live in global crisis. There's no telling how the economy is going to be worldwide in the next year, in the next 2 years, or the next 6 months. Inflation on the rise globally, including here in Canada. So I mean, I wouldn't do it just because the future is uncertain. You need to protect yourself, right? But then there's always a blend of, protect myself, and then YOLO, which is like you only live once, right? So we might all die tomorrow.
I'm
Survive the
living this.
pandemic. Yeah,
I'm living this exactly way of
sure.
thinking right now because I was really afraid of not dying, but losing family
Of
and
course.
friends and also dying. And I noticed that I was too focused on the future. So I
Yes.
want to have a great formation. I want to have a great education. I moved to São Paulo away from my family, which I haven't noticed that it was so costful for me.
Sure.
And now I'm living like, okay, I have to stop, live the moment, YOLO a little bit, because I was too ahead on the time, and I was losing the present moment. So I started enjoying things, and sorry. Oh, now I'm working.
Wonderful.
And
That's great.
yes, I'm happy actually because I have a great just a moment. My job's calling me.
Oh, there you go. You're important.
No, that's okay. I didn't change my shift today, and now I have to answer it in Portuguese. So, but I'm already in English. It's weird.
That's good practice. All right, people, that's it. Make sure you respond to your boss in English. He'll be like, what? So yeah. So yeah, everyone's got that blend between, let's go. Pandemic's over. I want to live a little. And then, oh no, like I want to save, you know what I mean? So good marketing from these different places, because they really convince people to do this stuff, right? I'm very progressive. So for me, I'm like, boycott this shit immediately. Like, don't do it. Everyone should stop paying for it at the same time, and, just boycott it, because I think it is very abusive. You hear me? Abusive. All right. It is. I'm sorry. For, anywhere, in any situation, in the United States as well, prices of shows have gone up exponentially in the hundreds of dollars. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. It could be that as well. I'm just an older guy who doesn't think that kind of stuff is worth it.
But I would say just that now the great thing is that even though that's everything is so unstable,
Sure.
you can. I think that I can start making plans, bigger plans than I used to do the last time we talked 1 year ago.
Absolutely.
And one thing that makes me happy is I think my English is not poor as it was. I don't know.
Not poor at all. It's great.
Yeah, I'm happy.
That's fantastic.
And it's been a long time since I used it. So I'm actually happy that I can speak as fluently as I can. But anyway, I intend maybe not to do an exchange semester in Tilburg in Holland and in the Netherlands.
Okay.
But maybe I'm going to do an internship, a summer internship either in Washington, D.C. by the Inter-American Development Bank.
Great.
Or in Germany by the Max Planck Institute for Public Law. So I will try both of them first. And if everything doesn't work, I'm probably going to go to Tilburg in the Netherlands. It's a really globalized institution, so I will speak English most of the time, probably 100% of the time. And yeah, I'm excited about it.
Great.
I do the TOEFL test in the end of this semester, maybe May.
Good. That's what we're planning. Just to keep you guys updated, at the end of the semester, we're all going to be scheduling our TOEFL tests together. So we'll do it all here in the classroom. I'll walk you guys through it. I'll be like, do this date, do this date. Of course, the simulator that we're going to be using is going to reflect your grade. So make sure that you do your homework, right? For all you watchers out there. Okay, great. John, just to keep you up to speed, I was discussing just an overview of the reading section, okay, which I know is one of your strong points, and a lot of you got some really great points. Oh, John, if you will clarify, what is the score you're aiming for this time? The same as last time, over 110?
Well, over 100, definitely, but if I could do 110, I would be satisfied.
Great. I would be satisfied too, very much so. So in order for us to get there, we have to reach about an over 25 in each section, right? 4 to 25, 100, that's it, basic math. What has changed in the test, John, just to give you a overview, the reading section, if you remember, used to be about 13, 12 questions, okay, per text. Now it's not like that anymore. It's 3 texts, 10 questions each. So a total of 30 questions, which means that each question is worth 1 point off of your 30 points. Okay, so go ahead.
There's not this. Is there these questions? You know, there were some questions that was worth 2
2
points.
points. Yeah, there are those questions, but they're not worth 2 points anymore. So they're just worth 1 point.
Yes.
All right.
I don't know how that impacts me, but
I think it's actually a lot easier now. You just because why is it easier, John? Because if you divide 20 minutes by 13 questions, you have less than 2 minutes per question, right? Because it's 20 minutes. Now you got 10 questions, 20 minutes. It's about 2 minutes per question. So you have like ample time to find the response, okay? And part of this video in the beginning, I was actually discussing how you should spend less time on vocabulary questions so that you could spend more time on other types of questions themselves, okay? Real quick, if you recall, vocabulary is about vocabulary in context, which means that the word will be highlighted already, read around the word to understand the context, eliminate 2 options which are not fitting of the context, and then pick the right one, okay? Why is the context important? Because usually, or sometimes, there are 2 words that might seem like the best option. For example, aggressively and convincingly. The word we use here is persuasively, right? So he's trying to persuade someone to do something else. However, if I'm persuasively arguing, it could be that I'm aggressively trying to convince you to be able to get my point across. Or I'm also convincingly arguing, but convincingly arguing sounds a little weird to me. I think that it was more of an aggressive manner than it was a convincing manner, okay? So to be careful with 2 words that might be pretty much the same. And I told the rest of the class who is watching this video to take a look at this later and tell me which one they think is correct in the next lesson, okay? So we're gonna leave that one a little more suspenseful. In the second question we have here, which is a little bit different, let me try and add you to the top here. I don't know why this green thing just sits here. Anyway, Zoom is still, oh, there you go. Zoom is still a new thing. Okay, to me. Let's now move down to the second question on the reading. So in this question here, the first essential rule is you need to be able to understand what the question is asking of you. So in this one, it's before the 1970s. So right away, you need to understand where this is. So here we have until the 1970s. So that's probably synonymous to before the 1970s. So your response is going to be more or less here, okay? Instead of you reading the entire paragraph, which might seem like a mouthful, my recommendation is usually to just find where the text is pointing you out in the question, and then like start reading from there. Of course, sometimes you'll have to read a little further, or sometimes you'll have to go back to the beginning here and check it out. But if you start looking for that keyword right there, that's going to cut you some time because you'll be able to then sort of find the response in this area. Okay. Yeah. Let's take a look then at what it says here. Until the early 1970s, most archaeologists did not consider the coast a possible migration route into the Americas because geologists originally believed that during the last ice age, the entire Northwest coast was covered by glacial ice. So basically, until that age, there was no way this could happen. They didn't believe it was possible because it was covered by ice. Let's look at the options. They could have not sailed directly from Virginia to Alaska and then southward because it was thought glacial ice covered the entire coastal region. So that might sound correct, but I'm not sure about this first part, okay? I'll come back to that later. Let's start by eliminating some options that don't sound correct. They were not aware that the climate would continue to become milder. That doesn't seem right to me because they're discussing how that most of these places were, frozen. Okay. So I don't know about climate becoming milder. There's nothing about milder here. Okay. So I'm going to eliminate B. C, they would have no interest in migrating southward from Virginia until after the continental glaciers had begun to melt. That's not what they said. They said they did not consider the coast a possible migration. Okay. They didn't talk about that people had no interest in migrating. They just said it wasn't possible. Okay. So it's not about the people, it's about the archaeologist's opinion. So the archaeologist said it's not possible to do that. It doesn't mean they didn't have any interest. Like who? The people? No, not really. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They lacked the navigational skill and appropriate boats needed for long distance trip. Let's see. Using watercraft, possibly skin boats, moved southward from Virginia along the Gulf of Alaska and then southward along the coast. So that's not true because they didn't lack the navigational skill. They had boats to be able to do that. Okay. So we eliminated a couple of these. Now let's take a look. Support is growing for the alternative theory that people using watercraft, possibly skin boats, moved southward from Virginia along the Gulf of Alaska and then southward along the northwest coast of North America, possibly as early as 16,000 years ago. This route would have enabled humans to enter southern areas of the Americas prior to the melting of continental glaciers. Okay, so before the melting of glaciers, they were able to move down that way. However, the archaeologists did not consider the coast a possible migration, which means that they could have not sailed directly from Virginia to Alaska because it was thought from the archaeologists that the glacial ice covered the entire coastal region. So I am going to go with A. Okay. This part, sorry? You would
I just
right?
I would do that too.
Wonderful. Why? Because this first one says that there's a theory that people had boats and they moved southward from Virginia along the Gulf of Alaska and they were able to make this route. But until the 1970s, most archaeologists did not consider that a possibility. The question is asking us about the opinion of the archaeologists, not about the people using boats.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So always go back to your question. What was their opinion about the earliest peoples to reach the Americas? They could have not sailed in that route because they thought glacial ice covered the entire coastal region. That's the archaeologist's opinion. And that's what we're looking for here in this question. Okay. So how to navigate this question in an easy way? Look at the keyword, 1970s. You'll find it right around here. Read it, of course, understand what this part of the paragraph is trying to say, and then begin your process of elimination. Okay, you will find that some questions can be easily eliminated. And if you have questions, you can go back to the text and read a little higher or a little lower as you go. All right.
Okay. Yes.
This question takes a little more time than a vocabulary-based question, which shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes. You know, some words are really easy. This word's a little more difficult, but we have some vocabulary points here, like, okay, inhospitable, the opposite of hospitable. Other words like, well, this is a more difficult one, impetus. But some words you'll find are very, very simple and shouldn't take you longer than about a minute, which is great because it'll give you a little more time to then do this type of question here. Okay, but once again, a great shortcut is read the keyword first, understand what the question is trying to ask you. Found it? Read around it. Go to the questions and start eliminating options that you think are incorrect. Okay? And 99% of the time, you should be able to find the right one if you use that method. All right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let us now move down to another question here. This is essential information highlighted. So now they made it even easier for you. Over here, they didn't tell you where the stuff was. They gave you some keywords. Okay, so if you're intelligent, which you guys are, you can find it here. Here, they made it even easier. They actually just highlighted it for you. Okay, so it's only about this highlighted passage. You don't have to read any of the stuff before. Okay, so it's just about this. All right, but now it's not factual information like this one. This is pretty factual. Factual information means that the question is going to basically paraphrase what this says. This question is which one expresses the essential information. So it's not going to be a direct copy of the highlighted passage. It's going to be a different sort of expression of what this means. Okay? Which means it can be a little tricky sometimes. Let's take a look at what it says here. Fladmark's hypotheses received additional support from the fact that the greatest diversity in Native American languages occurs along the west coast of the Americas, suggesting that this region has been settled the longest. Okay, so his hypotheses received support because the greatest diversity in the Americas is the West Coast. So this suggests that the region had been settled the longest. This is his hypothesis that the region had been settled the longest. So really read and pay attention to what the question is trying to tell you. And now let's move into the options. Because this region has been settled the longest, it also displays the greatest diversity in Native American language. That's not his hypothesis. His hypothesis is that because of the greatest diversity, this region had been settled the longest. While this response is referring to diversity and not that it had been settled the longest. Okay, so be careful because they're going to trick you with these questions. Here it says, because this region had been settled the longest, it also displays the greatest diversity. But that's not the essential information. The essential information is that his hypothesis was supported because of this fact. All right, so it's not about the region, it's about his hypothesis. B, Fladmark's hypothesis states that the west coast of the Americas has been settled longer than any other region. Probably. Okay. His hypothesis received support because it suggested that the region had been settled the longest. Okay. This one might be our correct one. Okay. It had been settled longer than any other region. The fact that the greatest diversity of Native American languages occurs along the west coast of the Americas lends strength to his hypothesis. That is also a possible correct one, because how is his additional support? What was his additional support? The fact that there was diversity on the west coast. Okay, so I'm between B and C now. D, according to Fladmark, Native American languages have survived the longest along the west coast of the Americas. No. So I immediately get rid of A and D. Okay. Now we have B and C. I know his hypothesis states that the west coast has been settled the longest, but I'm going to go with C, that says the fact that the greatest diversity in Native American languages occurs along the West Coast lends strength. This is the additional support faction. This one really encompasses all of the question. We have greatest diversity, okay? It occurs along the West Coast, and this is what adds strength to his hypothesis. So I am going to go with C. Which one do you think is right there, John? Can't hear you.
I would probably say D maybe, I'm not sure. Wait.
In any course, it's important to understand the essential information of this question, which is why it's tough, okay? My vote is going to be C. All right, that because of this fact, it adds strength to his hypothesis that this region had been settled the longest. So I'm going to go with C on this one. Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful. Now, this type of question here is going to take a little longer. All right. So just to back it up a little bit, we've got, sort of an easier question that shouldn't take that long, vocabulary. We have a keyword type question. You can find that here in the middle. We have essential information, and now we have the author's purpose. This question is going to take you substantially longer than the previous one because now we have an entire paragraph to go through. What is he trying to say about this paragraph? This one's a little more challenging. So what is he trying to say about this paragraph? Well, what he's trying to say here, how can we find this in a way that makes sense? What I would like to do is I usually read the first phrase and then the last phrase to kind of give me an idea of what the paragraph is about. Okay. So recent geologic studies documented deglaciation of the existence of ice-free areas throughout the major coastal areas of British Columbia by 13 years ago. Okay, so the purpose here is to show us that there are recent studies that documented the deglaciation of the existence of free ice areas. This is his purpose. Let's take a look. Indicate that a number of recent geologic studies seem to provide support for the coastal hypotheses. Indicate that coastal and inland migrations may have happened simultaneously. Explain why humans, okay, so a lot of information here. These usually take a little longer, okay? Let's take a look at the rest of the paragraph. So research now indicates that the sizable areas of the southeastern Alaska along the intercontinental shelf were not covered by ice toward the end of the last ice age. One study suggests that except for a 250-mile coastal area between southwestern British Columbia and Washington State, the northwest coast of North America was largely free of ice by approximately 16,000 years ago. Vast areas along the coast may have been deglaciated between around 16,000 years ago, possibly providing a coastal corridor. Okay, so his main idea here is that there has been a deglaciation and free ice areas on the coastal areas of Canada 13,000 years ago. Okay, let's take a look. What is he trying to explain here? Probably A, to indicate that a number of recent geological studies, which he is talking about here, seem to provide support for the coastal hypotheses, that there was in fact a corridor for migration. I'm not going to go with B because it's not talking about coastal and inland, and there's not information here on humans for animals and plants. I don't see that here either. And then of course D, show that coastal hypotheses may explain how people first reach Alaska, but did not explain how people reached areas like modern British Columbia. It does explain up here. It says that there were ice-free areas throughout coastal areas of British Columbia and Canada. So D is also eliminated. I'm going to go with A, that the number of recent geological studies are then providing support for the hypotheses that there was in fact an ice-free area. Okay, it takes a little while. to get this one down. There's a lot of information here. All right. But focus on the author's purpose. What is he trying to say when he is discussing the information in the paragraph? So by now, you've kind of already read some pretty big parts of the text. This is why we don't read the text in the beginning, because as soon as you get down to like question 3 or 4, you've kind of read most of the text anyway, because you have to go back up, analyze the text, go back down to the questions. Okay, so you've kind of done that already, so you don't have to read the whole text before, which is just time consuming, and let's face it, you're not going to remember what to do anyway after that. So there's really no reason. Okay. All right, let's take a look. John, you're on this one here. What does inhospitable mean?
Okay, so I have to first know the context, right?
Absolutely. So read around that.
This is the time period in which most scientists formerly believed the area to be inhospitable for humans. So I would say that inhospitable is that does not permit the human to live in.
Great, yeah, because it's not hospitable, so it's inhospitable. So
Yeah.
which one would you think is best?
Okay, so I should eliminate 2
Sure.
to make it easier. So I would say not dangerous. I think that is not appropriate, because I would say that something that's in hospital, it might be dangerous. And not familiar. I don't see the really connection
With hospitality, right?
Yes. I think that's it's there just to make me feel confused.
Sure.
And suitable and reachable are the 2 that I would be between.
Great.
So suitable.
Suitable is
Okay.
correct.
Is it correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's not
nice.
suitable. Okay. Not dangerous is the opposite of inhospitable. If something is inhospitable, it is dangerous. That's why it doesn't make sense. Okay. Not dangerous means hospitable, means cool. Great.
Okay.
Inhospitable is the worst. It's a negative. So if you pick not dangerous, that's the opposite. But they're trying to trick you with that, because inhospitable means dangerous. So that's why the context is very important. Good job. All right. Fantastic. Let us now move down to question 7. So this one here is also about very specific information. According to paragraph 5, the most recent geologic research provides support for a first colonization of America, dating as far back as, when is it far back? When were they first providing support for a colonization of America? Let's take a look. This is paragraph 5. Okay, so you obviously have numbers here, right? Check that out. You got 10,
Yes.
20, okay. 13, 14,000, okay. But what are we looking for here? Recent geologic research provides support for a first colonization. Let's take a look.
I would say the last sentence. The most recent geologic evidence indicates.
There you go. The most okay, look at that. Beautiful. See, the key word is there. The most recent geological evidence, it's like in your face, indicates that it may have been possible for people to colonize free ice regions along the continental shelf that were exposed by the lower sea level between 13,000 and 14,000 years ago. So between, the only one that makes sense is 14,000, right?
Yes.
That's not between, that's not between, that's not between. This is the only one that makes sense. Okay?
Yep.
There you go. You got it. So right away, most recent in the question, most recent. There you go. Great. Now we have another vocabulary question. This is not a very common word. Like, we don't use this in our everyday English. All right. So it might be a little weird at first. This is where the context really matters. So let's take a look at the context around the word, starting from here. Because of the barrier of ice to the east is that way, I think, the Pacific Ocean to the west, and populated areas to the north, there may have been a greater impetus for people to move in a southern direction. From the context, I can understand that it might be a problem or a solution. What do you think about this, John?
I think that impetus, I wouldn't choose protection, and I wouldn't choose possibility. I would choose probably incentive.
Incentive, right? Because there was a
Yes.
barrier of ice to the east, the Pacific Ocean to the west, populated areas to the north, there may have been a greater, what was it you said? Sorry, incentive
Incentive.
move in a southward direction. Okay, probably either incentive or possibility. We're going to take a look at which one it is later. Okay, so hold that thought. Okay, which leads us to the last two questions of today. This question here is sentence insertion. The strategy for this one, guys, is look for the word at the beginning and at the end. For example, this word moreover, we did this in class last week, but I'm going to ask you, John, today as a review. What does the word moreover mean for you?
Moreover means besides, I would say.
Sure, close, like there's more information.
Yes, more information.
Okay. Canada, snow, there's a lot of snow in Canada. Moreover, when it snows, you have to wear boots. Great. Something like that. All right. It's just more information. Make sense?
Yep.
Great. So moreover means that in the previous phrase, there was information that is then brought to this phrase. So it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle here. Let's take a look. Moreover, other evidence suggests that even if an ice-free corridor did go, okay, so ice-free corridor, look, we see that here. See that? And also here. So let's be careful. It would have lacked the resources needed for human migration. Now we have to place it somewhere. Okay. So if I place it A, moreover, that means the information is over here, but there's no information on ice-free corridors here. So I'm going to get rid of A. Okay. There is an ice-free corridor here. So the land travel theory about this migration was around 11,000, 12,000 years ago. There was an ice-free corridor stretching from eastern Beringia to the areas of North America south of the Great Northern Glaciers. It was this mid-continental corridor between two massive ice sheets, the Laurentide to the east and the Cordilleran to the west, that enabled the southern migration. Moreover, other evidence suggests that even if an ice-free corridor did exist, it would have lacked the resources needed from it. I don't know, that kind of sounds weird. It kind of sounds a little contrary to this. Let's read. Go ahead.
What I would say is that I would probably choose B because the land travel theory, etc., it brings an information that would be reinforced by the insert phrase.
Cool.
And then there is this but that would bring the idea of some contrary idea that would be the rest of the text is contrary to the idea that there were ice-free corridors.
Great. Let's read B and see if it fits there, okay? But belief in this ice-free corridor began to crumble when paleoecologist Glenn MacDonald demonstrated that some of the most important radiocarbon dates used to support the existence of an ice-free corridor were incorrect. Moreover, other evidence suggests that even if an ice-free corridor did exist, it would have lacked the resources needed for human migration. D kind of sounds correct because he had one incorrection and then another piece of negative evidence. Okay.
Okay, sure.
So very close there. I would definitely probably add it on C, because here we have a negative and here we have a secondary negative, okay? But you were nearly on point, all right? But that's a good reasoning right there. That's a good analysis. So always analyze and then try and read the next one to see if it fits there as well, okay?
Yeah, it was too soon. I had
And
to
then here
remind.
we have, he persuasively argued that such an ice-free corridor did not exist until much later, when the continental ice began its final retreat. Moreover, other evidence? Not really. Okay, I think the evidence is here, radiocarbon dates. This is definitely more evidence than to add it to D. So I believe that C is our correct one. Okay, awesome. Questions so far? Not really, right?
No, that's okay.
Well, let's move down now to the next question, the last one. All right, so by now you've kind of read 90% of the text. You know, you've read a paragraph here, you got to summarize this, you know, supports the idea. So even though you read this section, you also probably had to read most of it to understand it. Okay, here you read the word in context, but maybe you read a little bit before just to kind of get more of the context. Okay, so by now you understand what most of the text is about. The possible migration from to the Americas from the glaciers of the northern American areas. Some of them think it was possible, others think it was not possible because it was frozen. There are different hypotheses. In this last question, the secret here is this part of the question. Recent evidence, right there, recent evidence favors a rival to the long-standing theory that the Americas were colonized 11,000 to 12,000 years ago by people migrating south from Beringia along a mid-continental ice-free corridor. Okay, so this is the evidence that favors that. Now we have to compare these. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options, and only 3 of these are going to be correct. So 3 of them are going to be eliminated. Okay. So
Yes.
what do we do here? We have to go back to the text of these. This question takes substantially longer to analyze than the previous questions. So by now, you've taken, you know, very little time on impetus. You've taken almost no time on 7 and 6. So you should be left with a couple minutes to be able to get this one right. Allow yourself a few minutes. Don't take too long on the vocabulary questions or the easier ones, because you will reach this one here at the end, which requires more of your attention. What I like to do here is I like to read the questions first, okay? Let's see, so evidence that an ice-free corridor between the 2 ice sheets developed when the continental ice first began to melt came primarily from radiocarbon dating, maybe. There is a growing support for the theory that migration took place much earlier by sea, following a coastal route along Alaska and down the northwest coast, maybe. Recent geologic evidence indicates that contrary to what had been believed, substantial areas along the coast were free of ice as early of the 16,000 years. This is also something we read before, that there was a theory that it was free of ice. If we go back to one of the questions we had here, coastal hypothesis, okay, which means that there was a hypothesis that there was a deglaciation of, and there were also free ice areas. Okay, so this, just by reading this one, it might be correct. All right, there was a coast where free ice as early as 6,000 years. So this might be one of them too. D, research shows in that parts of the intercontinental shelf had remained covered with ice were colonized by variety. No, it doesn't say anything in our text about early human groups that adapted to extreme cold. This you will not find in the text. And E, there is evidence suggesting that areas along the coast may have contained enough food resources between Okay, if you don't know what this is, the best way to do this, look for the keyword. So 13 and 14,000. Let's go back up to the text and see what it says around that word. Here we go. Okay. Vast areas along the coast may have been deglaciated beginning around 16,000 years ago, possibly providing a coastal corridor for the movement of plants, animals, and humans sometime between 13,000 and 14,000 years ago. The coastal hypotheses gained remains okay. So I don't see a lot about that there were animals there. Let's go back down and take a look. Enough food resources, which made it possible. Not so sure about that. This is recent evidence, remember. And the last one, even though the northern part of the continent allowed for a more varied economy, I don't think it has anything to do with the economy right here, why they moved south. Okay, so again, we have to start eliminating a couple of the ideas. Remember that it's most recent evidence, okay, favors a rival to long-standing theory. So the trick is for this one here is to go back to the text and compare the questions with their respective options, okay? What I would like you guys to do as homework, if you guys can, which I think you will after this video, is complete the entire reading section 1, okay? All the way down to the end of this one here. You can find this, I believe, in the beginning on page 10. Even though we did some of these together, okay, we still haven't corrected it, all the way down to question 10, okay? That is going to be the group's homework for this week, is the entire reading section 1 of the TOEFL tests volume 2, okay? And then that way, next week, we will come back together and we will definitely look over the different questions that you guys had. And I want to see how you guys get through these questions here, so I can then explain to you the best possible approach. Okay? Good stuff. Any questions, John, so far?
Yes, I have 2 questions.
Wonderful.
First is, do you have this? I remember that last time we had classes, you had a platform in which we could, I think the name was
Practice?
TOEFL.
Yes, absolutely. We're not
Do you
using
still
TOEFL
have
Bank anymore. There's actually a platform. So I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop filming here, guys. Okay. I'm going to post this on YouTube later so you guys can watch. I'll send you guys a link, as you will know. And then you guys can watch this class and complete your homework. Okay. So I'm just going to stop filming here, and then I will get to John's question. Okay.
Perfect.